Welcome to Decide to Move podcast, where top experts share tips and strategies to grow you from where you currently are to where you are destined to be personally and professionally. Now here's your host, author, speaker, business strategist, CEO, and founder of Decide to Move, Monica M. Bijou.
Welcome to another episode of Decide to Move podcast, where we've been having amazing speakers that's bringing you a ton of tips, tools, and strategies. And today is no different than any other day. I have an amazing speaker here with me to bring her personal story of how she went from being homeless to being able to help entrepreneurs find their direction and their journey as well. Today I have with me Shereese. How are you doing, Shereese?
I'm doing so well, Monica. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Of course, of course. Before we get started, I want you to, if you can tell us about who you are, your entrepreneur journey, and then go after whatever you have to share with us. I'm super excited for you to be here with me.
Yeah, awesome. So my name is Shereese Alexander. I'm a business networking coach. So I help entrepreneurs grow their network so they can grow their business. So I help them find potential mentors and clients and just other really cool people doing really cool things in their world. And my story starts back in our last really great recession of 2008. I was a bright-eyed graduate student at NYU, and I was getting my PhD in microbiology, so I'm a germ scientist. And basically what I wanted to do was just save the world, like, anybody wants to. So ever since I was a little girl, I had this dream of just growing up and finding a cure for AIDS. That was my thing, is I'm totally going to do that. And then I thought, by the time I'm grown, they'll have a cure. Like, I won't need to do that, but I'm just going to study something else and just get the Nobel Prize and save the world. Well, the problem is, when I got to grad school, even though I did love the mechanics of science and how things work, I think it's fascinating, I also realized that my impact on society was like none. Basically, it was none at all. Because the way science works is that it takes time. It takes time for things to happen, and then it takes time to test things and to put things in trials. And I realized that the impact I was going to have was really going to take years, maybe my whole lifetime, maybe not until after my lifetime, until there was something really meaningful. And so I kind of started to think, how can I add more to the world than what I'm doing now? So I ended up leaving grad school and looking for another place, looking for a way for me to really give something that was unique. And I'm sure every entrepreneur can relate to that, because that's what a lot of entrepreneurs go into their own business for, is to have their own impact and their own income that they decide. Well, unfortunately, it was just like a really bad timing situation, because that was in 2008 and there were no other jobs available. I mean, Monica, I'm talking McDonald's, Starbucks, like nothing, like everything was taken. Nobody was hiring. And it wasn't long before I was evicted, and I was sleeping in a truck in the middle of a blizzard. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is, I'm living in New York City, and I'm from California, but at the time I was living in New York City for school. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is like crazy. Like, how can I do this? How can I make it through this? And I remember calling my mom one day, like sitting on a street corner, sitting on my one little suitcase, like all my belongings in the world. And I was just boohoo crying, okay? And I'm not a crier, especially not in public. But I was like doing the ugly, snotty cry, where you're just like, ooh, girl, get a tissue. And I was calling my mom, and I was just like, I have failed at life. I feel like such a loser. Like, I can't believe how everything is just falling apart. And the crazy thing is, this was like a Sunday, and I had just gotten hired to be a professor starting on that Tuesday. Like, I had just gotten hired to teach at a local community college. And I was just like I can't do this. And so I called my mom, just so broken. And my mom, in a moment of motherly wisdom, just gave me the best advice ever. And she's not the motherly wisdom type. She's the like live and let live type. But this was an exception. And she just said, you know what? I think that if you leave now and you don't take this opportunity to teach, you're going to regret it for the rest of your life. And she said, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And I think this can make you stronger. And so I was kind of quiet for a minute and just kind of sniffling. And I was like, okay, I'm going to try to stay. And I did. I was like, I'm going to give it one semester and then I'm getting out of here. But I actually ended up staying for another couple, like 2 years almost, just teaching and going through that process, So I'm like living in the shelter in the day or at night and teaching in the day. And it was really, really hard. But why that's important is because, there was a night. There was a night in the shelter, probably my third day in the shelter, where I'm sleeping on this like bloody cot, which was not my blood. So it's just that kind of situation in this converted warehouse at the end of Brooklyn. It's drafty. It's so bleak. And I'm laying in this corner in my little cubby next to my little locker. And I'm just like, feel broken. I actually felt like my mind was slipping away. When people say they feel like they're losing their mind, like I could feel my mind being lost to the ether. And I just remember thinking to myself, kind of like what my mom said, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And I had a choice at that moment. Either I can choose to let this moment define me and I can just stay here, right? There were women in that shelter who you could tell had been there for years and years and years. I could just stay here. This could be my life. And at this moment, I'm like 26. So I'm like, this could be my life as a 26-year-old until forever. This is it. Or I can say that this is the lowest moment in my life and I will never let things get this bad again. And so I made that choice. I decided to do something more with my life. Let that be the lowest point. And I really had to rethink my priorities, my goals, my impact, all of it, because my whole life I'd been trying to win the Nobel Prize, right? I'd been working towards this goal of saving the world. And I'd been putting my achievements over my relationships, over everything, actually, over my health, over everything, because I thought, I'm going to grind really hard. I'm going to work really hard for a short amount of time. And then once I get there, wherever there is, then I can stop and have time for me and my family and stuff like that. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs can also relate to that, right? That hustle, that grind, and that like putting in the hours. And I think there's a place for that. But I had sacrificed relationships on the altar of achievement. And now here I am laying on this bloody cot with all of these degrees, and who cares, right? That wasn't sustaining. And I kind of did a little fast forward and I thought, man, on my deathbed, I am not going to be saying, I wish I had another degree, or if only that paper was a little bit better that I published. Like, that's just not what I'm going to say. I'm going to want to look around and see who's standing around my deathbed. Who are the people who matter? And that's really why I'm so passionate about helping entrepreneurs connect with other cool people, connect with their clients better, connect with their audience better, connect with other peers, connect with mentors, because I realize that at the end of the day, relationships are what's most important. Achievements are great. Achievements are absolutely fantastic. But if you don't have anybody to share them with, they're just a little lackluster. I don't know. What do you think about that, Monica?
First of all, thank you so much for sharing that. I absolutely love your story. And it's true. Like, I actually experienced homelessness at the age of 15. And same thing. It's about connection, knowing that you have people around you. And that's why I do what I do. Decide to Move is literally, it's an acronym. It's about helping people go from where they are personally and professionally, and not just being stuck. And so when you ask, about making an impact, influencing people, everything that I do, my Confident Professional Women's Circle, having this podcast, everything is really about connection and helping people grow from where they are and know that they don't have to stay there. It's a choice. It is definitely, some people say it's not a choice, but making a movement is that actual moment of, okay, you know what, I can sit here, like you said, you made a decision at that moment that I can stay here, or I can, and let this be the lowest, or I can actually say, okay, this is the lowest that I'm going to be. And oftentimes people allow their circumstances make them become victims, and then they make everyone around them miserable because of the things that they went through. So I totally respect you and love the fact that you have such a passion to bring connection. And that's how we met. We met at a joint venturing where it was literally about people helping people connect with their clients, not how big is your list, right?
Yeah.
How can you support me, or anything from a standpoint of about being like, money's gonna come, but you have to form that connection first. And so I totally appreciate you sharing your story, because that's powerful.
Thank you. Yeah, and I agree. So the conference that she's talking about is JVology Live, and that conference was amazing, Monica. That was like the best conference I've been to. I've been to a lot of conferences, as you can imagine, but what I loved about that is that was what I want all conferences to be. Exactly what you said, kind of like that give and take. And there were so many people that I met who were just like, you know what, we need to do something together. Let's do something to serve our people even more. And I just thought that was such a cool place to be in, and so many amazing people to be around, where the client really is the central focus. You know, one person that I follow in business who I deeply admire and respect, he's very business savvy. And one of the things though he said that I did that rubbed me the wrong way was he was kind of talking about how to make the most out of your list and how to make money when you have a small list. And he used this analogy where he said, it's kind of like if you have, you know, just a handful of oranges, you want to squeeze every last drop out of those oranges until they're like dry. And you don't want to like leave anything on the table. And so I kind of hear what he's saying, right? He's saying like, don't leave money on the table. But at the same time, I was like, well, I don't want to squeeze people dry. I want people to like happily give me money when they want to and not give me money when they don't want to. I don't want to be like, I'm squeezing every last penny out of your wallet, like I'm shaking you upside down. And so I felt like JBology Live was the opposite of that, right? It wasn't about getting and taking, which I think is a big mistake that a lot of entrepreneurs make when they are networking, especially like when they're going to conferences and seminars. A big mistake is having that take mentality. And I know none of us want to think of ourselves as selfish. We're not trying to be selfish, but like it's survival of the species. That's kind of wired into us. And I think that attitude of like, how can I get something from you is such a turn off, and just does not work. It just doesn't work. And JBology Live had the opposite. It was very much like, how can I give to you? And it just makes you like, I don't know, feel really happy.
Exactly. You know, and as you're talking about that, it made me think about a recent event. I had a summit back in December, and I had some phenomenal speakers on there, but there was one speaker in particular that was more focused on how is it going to help them? What are they going to get from it? Instead of it being about really bringing information to audiences and helping people grow and helping them develop. And my production team, it was funny because after we did the recording, you know, she had her I shouldn't say gender, but you know, on like afterwards, and my production team, it was like, can we find a way of not having this person on your summit? And I'm like, from that standpoint on, it makes it very difficult for me ever to work with them. And when it came to doing like any type of future services, they will not ever be on my podcast. They won't be on anything that I provide, because I do not want to expose my audience and the people that I serve to that type of mentality, because people won't get the authenticity and the integrity and everything that goes with that when you want to make sure that you're bringing value to someone and not just trying to get you know, people buy experiences and they buy results. They're unfortunately, when you have entrepreneurs that are more focused on what can they get from that person, oh, I got money, it doesn't bode very well. And so I absolutely love what you do, and you are passionate about it because of the fact that your circumstance as well as mine has made us where we want to help people and help them grow and not just get stuck. So absolutely love that.
I love how you said that, Monica, not get stuck. Getting stuck is the worst. And you know what happens when we get stuck? We are relying on ourselves. That's what happens. That's what causes stuckness, is when we're saying, I'm going to DIY it. I'm going to go alone. And you know what, to be fair, that's a strength that we have as entrepreneurs, is that we can lift ourselves up by our bootstraps. We can give ourselves that internal drive to push ourselves further. And there's something kind of exciting about that too, because you're like, what can I do? What can I create? What can I make? And that's really cool. So that's our biggest strength. But as Jay Bassett from JBology Live, right, he often says our biggest strength is also our biggest weakness, because we're so good at being solo acts, or, you know, maybe we're like a small partnership or something like that, that we don't want to rely on other people or delegate anything or bring anybody else into the fold, because we're like, what if they don't do it the way I do it? What if they don't have the same quality? What if they don't have the same care? What if they're not me? And so we try to do it alone, and then that's what gets us stuck. We become a bottleneck in our business, because we can only grow as much as we can grow personally and professionally, which is your whole thing. I really love how you said stuck, because that's what gets us unstuck, is other people and learning to trust other people. And that doesn't mean that everyone's going to earn that trust or everyone's going to keep that trust, but you still need to learn to trust, because you need other people in your world and in your circle who want to support you and want to encourage you. And that was one of the amazing things about that conference, is I felt so supported and so encouraged just by seeing the way, I mean, personally, as well as seeing the way that other people were supported. I was just like, man, this is a really cool group of people to be around.
Yeah, exactly. And when you go into how can I help you? How can I serve you? It's a totally different connotation. It's not about, well, and I've actually had several people reach out to me in that same regard that are part of joint venturing. It's like, how can we work together? How can we support each other? What can we do? And it's just great to have that instead of it being like, hey, I have this program and I would love for you to market for me. Or how big is your list? I once had someone reach out to me to ask me to support
A launch.
their tribe.
Okay.
And so then once I gave her, like information about what I can do, I asked her, how can I serve her? And she says, well, how big is your list? And I was like, you know what? Don't even worry about it. In fact, you don't even have to worry about me helping your tribe either, because it sounds like we have different audiences, because mine cares about quality over quantity. And that's the part that makes a big huge difference. And so she missed out on this big huge opportunity because her first question was, how big is your list? And I still see people marketing that, and that's great and beautiful, but you can have a audience of or list of 20,000 and maybe only two buy, where somebody may have a list of 100 and 10 buy. Is more
Right.
profitable in that
Hmm.
moment, because it's all about connecting. How much do you connect with your audience? How
Yeah.
much you providing value, and your list, I should say, as well. So that's, to me, it's definitely a turnoff when I have someone that says that to me. How big is your list? Don't worry.
Yeah, I had a person say to me, so we were talking about like how what we do is very similar, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. Like we serve a similar audience and we do a similar thing. And I don't usually think of things in terms of competition. I think of things in terms of how can we work together. If we're doing the same thing, how can we complement each other? Or if it's too similar, then maybe we can't. But let's try. Or maybe people won't really care for my style, but they'll love your style. You know, Monica, it's like a funny thing that happens in marketing where there's always like a McDonald's next to like a Burger King or something, right? They do that on purpose because they give people options and people go, oh, I don't really care for this burger, but I do kind of want that burger. And so I kind of feel the same thing with quote unquote competition, is that we can be just giving people options. Maybe people have come into my world and they're like, not really feeling it. And I could say, hey, how about this other person who does something similar? So I spoke to this woman who does something similar to me and I thought, hey, this is really cool. Like maybe we can do something together. And she was just like, you know what? Maybe when you're more established like I am. And I was just like, okay, well, maybe not. Maybe not. If that's going to be the case, then like, I don't think this is going to work out, because I already felt like this was coming across from her end as a competition, as like, you're going to, I don't know, somehow thin out my people or take my people. And that's not how it works. I mean, I spent a lot of money on courses and everything else. And it's because somebody that I follow recommends somebody else, and then boom, I'm in their world. And there's no shortage. It just keeps going. It's just pure abundance. So that's kind of a good, like, I don't know, weed out question for people that you want to work with.
Exactly. And and the great thing is that when your energy, because you have a beautiful energy, that's how we end up
Thank
connected.
you.
I connect with people based on their energy and who they are, and I feel people deeply, so I can tell like, this person, we're going to work out. And some, I'm like, no, because there's several people that came up to me and we were talking, and they were like, oh, you have a podcast? I would love to be on your podcast. And I had this woman literally hound me down while we were there, where I'm actually talking to someone, and she kept interrupting. Well, what's your podcast about? I want to be on your podcast. And I was like, you are too pushy. And I don't, yeah, no, it's not. And like, literally, I think she gave me her card. I don't even know where it's at right now. And I keep all my business cards. And that's, because I can't get with people who are so negative or so pushy. And I know for a fact that you're not going to do my audience or even your audience a disservice, because it's not just about me, it's about how do you support you as well. But it's about connection, because if I love your spirit and then I'm doing something, I'm going to take you with me to something else, and then you're going to connect it with other people, and then next thing you know, like that same person, because this has happened to me, the same person who says stuff like you're not established, we're on the same summit. Oh, hey. You know what I mean? So people have to be careful when they're saying stuff like that to people. You never know. You have no idea. I remember this one guy came up, like every time I go to Barnes and Noble, there's this professor, psychology professor that sits there, and people have no idea that this man is a head of knowledge, right? So he's sitting there, and he'll come over and ask you what you're working on. and he was talking to me. He was talking about what it is what you see, kind of thing. And he was saying it's the opposite of that, because oftentimes people judge someone. He said he remember being in Boston, and they had a conference, and they saw this guy with jeans on, and one day, and everybody's like, oh, he looks like he doesn't, like homeless, and just kind of making judgment. And then later on, when they had the conference, they saw the guy, he had on this 3-piece suit, and he was the one that was running it, and he was like, oh crap, and it's like, so you never know who you're talking to, who you're running into.
Yeah.
You have to
I love that.
Careful.
Yeah, I love that. That's like such a key philosophy that I live by, is kind of basically it comes down to respect, right? Respecting everyone, treating everyone with respect, whether they're homeless or not. Because I can tell you from being in that shelter as a professor and also being homeless, you didn't know my background. Couldn't tell by looking, right? And that was one of the most humbling things about my experience that really helped me, was to not judge a book by its cover. Now, I already treated everybody pretty much equally, just because it's easier to do that, and I just don't believe in the hierarchy thing. But I will say that experience helped me not judge a book by its cover, which also helped me when I became a professor, because I did the same thing with my students. I was just like, ooh, I don't know, the student seems kind of airy. I'm not sure how well they're going to do this. They seem kind of like an airhead. And then they end up being my A++ student. And I'm like, all right, like, just because they look a certain way doesn't mean anything. And I can tell you, as a 26-year-old professor, I mean, I kind of look like I'm 26 now, and I am not. So as a 26-year-old professor, I look like I was 12, right? So I had the same experience. I would come into class and be like, good morning, everyone. I'm Professor Alexander. And I would start writing on the board, and everyone would start laughing, like waiting for the punchline, because I think it's some kind of joke, right? I'm the same age as my students, because this is a community college, but I look like I'm 12. So everyone's looking, like waiting for me to be like, psych, and then sit down. But then the whole lecture's over, and they're leaving, and they're like, wait, really? Like every single semester this happened, where my students were like, are you really? And it was hilarious. It was just hilarious. And I had some students who couldn't deal. They were just like, I can't take this class. Like, I just cannot have a professor who's like half my age. Like, I can't do it. And I totally respect that, because I feel like that when I'm on YouTube and I'm watching these video tutorials, and it's like a 10-year-old who's explaining it, and I have to like put my pride down and be like, you know what? This 10-year-old knows how to do something I don't know how to do. So let me just listen to him. But yeah, I totally agree. Like, looks can be deceiving, but people's heart, like what's inside, like that shines through. That totally shines through, regardless of how you look, regardless of how you sound, what is important to you, your values, that always shines through. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Oh, totally. Exactly. I mean, because for me, I operate from a place of integrity, right? And integrity is super huge and important, because if you don't have integrity, I mean, for me personally, I have a hard time working with someone who doesn't come from that place. I can feel it, and it feels icky, and I'm just like, I'm just not comfortable being around someone that does not breed integrity. They're not authentic. They don't know how to connect. And some people have, like, Asperger's or some kind of spectrum where they're socially like put off, but you can feel their energy. You can tell the difference of a person who just socially struggle with connecting with people, compared to a person who just is one of those, like,
they're making bad choices in their connections. Yeah,
they're looking at you like you're up and down and kind of things like that, and very off-putting. For me, I think that's totally, I struggle with people such as that. I feel things very deeply, and I allow my gut instinct to run me and rule me and actually guide me into being connected with people, and it has not left me. It was when I was younger and I listened to that and I got in trouble. And it's so funny, they're probably like, oh, they like 20 and 30-year-olds. It's like, thank you. No, we're not. Thank you.
I'll take it.
Exactly. I'm like, I'll be celebrating my 23rd anniversary of being 25 pretty soon. So
so for all of you guys doing math out there, you know the secret.
Exactly.
Yeah, I just turned 36 this year.
Exactly.
But hey, I'll take my 20s until people say I no longer look like I'm in my 20s. I'm just going to take it. Take it.
Yeah, people always tell me I'm in my 30s, and I'm like, I appreciate you. Thank you very much. And it's like, when I tell them my age, they actually have to ask me for, like, let me see. I'm like, why would I say I'm older than I am? That's like so.
I wouldn't do that.
It doesn't make sense. So you shared a lot when it comes to like really connecting and different things like that. What are some of the strategies? Well, first, because of the fact that you did a lot of study on germs, and then with everything that's going on now, and then also learning how to connect with people, what is your take on what's happening right now?
Yeah, so it's really interesting because naturally meaning like growing up and stuff, I was very socially awkward, and I think a lot of people can relate to that. For whatever reason, everyone feels like they were socially awkward when they were little, probably because we all were. Um, but when I got to college, I remember my best friend signed me up for this, like, you kind of talk about the different clubs that you're in and stuff like that, and people come around and they sign up for your clubs or whatever. And I was like, why would you sign me up for this? Like, I'm a total introvert. I do not like people. I do not like crowds. She was the opposite. She's like, it's going to be fun. So we went to this thing. And so I'm standing at the booth and I'm refusing to speak to anyone, right? I'm standing there like with my arms crossed. And when people walk up, I just hand them a flyer. Like, don't say a word, because I have no social skills whatsoever. And then there's this guy next to me. I'll never forget. His name is Mike. And every time someone walks up, he's like, hi, my name's Mike. Nice to meet you. What's your major? And he like has a conversation. And I was like, huh, that's really interesting, because he's getting like these great conversations with strangers. Let me see if this works. So the next person walks up and I'm like, hi, my name's Shereese. So what's your major? And the exact same response he got was the exact same response I got. And I was like, wait a minute. Social skills are a skill? What? Like, I thought that people were just born with it. I thought they were just born getting along well with people and having conversations with strangers, and I just wasn't born with it. And I was just doomed to be awkward forever. And at that moment, I was like, wait a minute. This is like riding your bike, tying your shoes, playing the guitar. You can just learn this. This is just the way that you talk, the way that you approach people, the way that you act to put people at ease. I was like, oh my gosh. And that kind of started me on this journey of like, along with being a scientist and knowing how things work, one of those things was, how do people work? Like, how do social interactions work? And I really made a study of it and then kind of practiced it and went, okay, that didn't work. And I tried something else, tried that. Okay, that did work. And I kind of built up my social skills layer by layer that way. But one of the things that I had to develop was that I didn't have at all. Like, I mean, I could talk to people, but I was just so selective, like only friends who I knew wouldn't judge me or whatever. But one of the things that was really hard for me was have you heard of the 5 love languages? Have you heard of that book by Gary Chapman? Okay.
Yeah, I
okay.
teach that.
So the love language of touch, like that one was just not in my wheelhouse. And so I was like, oh, how do you do that and not be weird? Because I think people who are touchy-feely are weird. Like, how do you do that? And it took years of me learning how to like touch people appropriately, right? Like a hand on the shoulder, like just like little things that are just, they're totally innocent and harmless, but they make people feel really cared for. Or like when you shake someone's hand to fully shake their hand and not like just use the tips of your fingers or something weird, like just different things to make people feel at ease. And I was like, even though it's not in my wheelhouse, I see the reaction that other people have. I see how comfortable and cared for it makes other people feel. And that's important to me. So I'm willing to get out of my comfort zone to put other people into their comfort zone. Now, what's interesting about what's going on now with the COVID, with all of this coronavirus stuff going on, is that people are now practicing social distancing, which is good, which is, keeping space from one another. But it's almost like reverting back. It's almost like forcing me to revert back to those days when I didn't touch anyone or talk to anyone or look at anyone or any of that. And it's kind of giving some people an excuse to be really standoffish and rude. And I don't think that that's really necessary. I mean, I think you can hold your physical space and your boundaries without making people feel like a leper. Stay away from me. No, you must have it. You must have it. You must have it. I think that and that just comes out of panic. And that's just people, trying to protect themselves. And so I totally get it. But I will say that there are ways to continue to be social without being all in each other's personal space. And that's going to be the challenge that we're actually going to face moving forward, especially with, we talked a little bit offline before we did this recording about how there are a bunch of conferences that are being shut down, right? Because it's just too many people. There are theme parks being shut down, like everything's being shut down. Schools are being shut down. Everything's being shut down. So one of the challenges of that situation is isolation. Right there, the first part is panic because people freak out, but eventually that will wear out because the adrenaline can't stay that high for that long. But the isolation is going to be a challenge, right? Just at first, people are going to be like, "Oh, this is so nice. I don't have to be around people." All my introverts out there, you guys know who you are. You're going to be like, "Finally, no one's going to force me to go out. I don't have to go out to the party, to the club. I don't even have to go to the office because they sent us all home or whatever." But eventually, even for introverts, that gets old. We as human beings belong in community. That is how we thrive. We need it to survive. And the most powerful form of connection besides physical touch is that just being in each other's presence, like eye to eye, face to face, like you said, Monica, feeling someone's energy. And you can't really do that over a text. So in this time where meeting face to face is going to be a challenge, the next best thing is meeting like we're doing right now, meeting online face to face, doing FaceTiming, using Zoom, using whatever means that you can actually see each other's face. And even though that it might seem kind of silly, like if we're just talking about the day or the weather or whatever, why do we need to see each other's face? But it's going to be so important to maintain a sense of connection and community in this time when we're practicing social distancing. This is really the time. If you're not up on your technology game, this is the time to get on up on it and get on your video chat and talk to people and look at their face, because that's how you can see their energy, their attitudes, their emotions, and you can really feel connected to other people. So I recommend doing that when you can, instead of just shooting off a quick text. If you can do a quick video message instead, that's going to make people just feel like we're still all in this together, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, because I like for my podcast, it's a video podcast and it'll be uploaded. All the videos will be uploaded on YouTube soon. But one of the great things is that I have met people via Zoom. All my interest calls, everything is done via Zoom, because I need to see that person's energy, their connection. Then from there, when I actually see them in person, you'll be surprised how it's like you feel like you already know them, because you've been having this conversation on a daily basis. When I have my accountability calls, I have accountability partners. We do it via Zoom. We don't do it through phone. We actually do it through Zoom. So it's face-to-face connection, even if we're not writing anything down. And it just changes the energy and allows you to have a better connection with someone. And I know for me, if I'm on the phone, I'm literally on the speaker. Sometimes my phone's in the living room, I'm on my Bluetooth and I'm doing other things, and I'm not fully connected in that conversation. But when I'm in Zoom, I'm forced to be connected with them. I can't be watching TV or doing something else while I'm actually talking to them. So it provides a better connection as well. So I totally love what you said as far as what's the option for people to do. I actually did a live recently where I talked exactly about that, about different things that you can do. It's about reconnecting with your family, really resetting yourself, getting refocused, and using this time to really get things done that you said that you wanted to get done that you hadn't. And so instead of using an excuse to, I'm going to sleep all day, set the same routine, get up, do your Zoom calls, do your, just find other ways to get things done in a more healthier way, and actually really connecting with people even more so. You can connect with people more because like you'll have more time. Like for me, I'm looking forward for them saying, you can stay home for 2 weeks. Oh my gosh, I would be so happy.
Please don't come back. Yeah. It's really interesting. So before we got on this call, when I was planning for this conversation, I came up with 3 strategies to help entrepreneurs connect better with their audiences. And I think now I kind of want to modify these strategies a little bit, add some technology to it. But now is like the perfect time. Now is the perfect time to connect with your audience, because everyone's going to be starving for connection in the next couple of weeks, because everything's just shutting down. So people are going to be like, I'm kind of getting a little bit lonely, or I'm just kind of feeling like a little bit bored too, because we do get entertainment just from people watching, just from seeing what's going on in the grocery store or whatever. So this is really the time for you to share your personality and your spark and your voice with your people in maybe a deeper way. So if you're the kind of person who's not really into video, this might be the time to give it a chance, to shoot some video email messages to your people. I do this whenever somebody subscribes to my list. I shoot them a video using Bonjoro. So that is a piece of technology that you can try, but there's another one's bombbomb.com. There's a couple different pieces of technology, but basically when I get a new subscriber, it's like, ding, new person. And so I'm like, oh, cool. And I can shoot a video on my phone right then and there and just say, hey, so-and-so, I'm so glad you just joined, and just give them like a little something. And like, that's really special. And sometimes I just go through my list and I just send videos, and I'm just like, Happy New Year, or just whatever. And just, I don't know, it just feels kind of special. You get this little video. They're super short. I don't think I do them any longer than a minute. They're usually like 30 seconds, but they're just like these little points of connection where people can really see you. And so my first tip is actually to listen to your people, to listen to what they have to say. and to get that feedback from them. Right now, it's kind of a lot. I don't know about you, Monica, but I've gotten at least like 17 different emails yesterday about what people are doing because of the coronavirus. And I was like so overwhelmed. I was like, if I get one more email, I'm going to lose it. So maybe this week's not the super best time. I don't know. For you to be heard by your audience and for you to hear them, just because right now the internet, everyone's scrambling. But maybe in a couple of days when things have calmed down, that might be a good time to reflect. And your video doesn't have to be long, doesn't have to be super deep. It could just be, hey, I'm checking in on you because this coronavirus thing is crazy. I hope you guys are doing well. That could be it, right? And that just makes people feel like, oh, that's nice. Like they reached out to me and just wanted to see that I'm okay. That feels really good. So, listening to your people, letting them hear you and kind of thinking about when's the best time to do that. My second tip is be vulnerable. And this one is a little tricky because I think sometimes people think vulnerable means that you have to share some deep, dark secret. And really you don't. It just means that you can be you. So I know one of my challenges as an entrepreneur is wanting to always be like polished and professional and always come across that way. And then I have to be like, yeah, but that's not really me. Like I'm not the polished and professional, like super crisp, sharp type of girl. And so why would I pretend to be? Like everybody's going to see that that's fake. And I'm not even going to like it because I don't like being that girl because that's not me. So that's really what I think vulnerability is just really being you and not being so pressured to be polished and perfect. Now, if you just so happen to be polished and perfect, by all means, be polished, be perfect, and own it. There's a guy, his name is Matthew Kimberly, and I don't know what he's doing now, but a few years ago, he had a program called Single Malt Mastermind. And his whole, like, his persona is this, like, really sophisticated, like a 007, basically, like a James Bond, a really sophisticated James Bond. And so, I mean, he had, like, this, this, like, glass with, I don't know, Scott or bourbon or what, I don't know, something in it. I don't drink, so I don't freaking know, but something in the glass that looked really cool. And, like, he was just very, like, sophisticated. And that was his whole thing. It was, like, I think his landing page was something like, this is a list for the grown and sexy or something like that, right? And it was just very, like, very polished. And he's also hilarious. But, like, that's his thing. So that should be him. My landing pages have, like, me doing all these quirky, weird faces because that's me and that fits. So that's my second tip, be vulnerable, which doesn't mean be sad, but you can be. And then the third one is to be weird, be odd, be quirky, be different. I think a lot of times, and especially newer entrepreneurs, we can feel like there's a mold to fit in because we're like unplugging ourselves from the 9-to-5 maybe and trying to plug ourselves into the entrepreneurial world. And so we're looking for that same transition of like, here's the way to be, here's the little box to fit in. And then you are totally disheartened because there is no box and you have to make your own shape. And so we could kind of think like, well, it's kind of along the lines of being polished, like being really vanilla, don't make any waves, don't have any strong opinions, just be super likable because we want to build that know, like, and trust factor. But ironically, what builds the know, like, and trust factor is being different, which could be being controversial if you really believe it, not being controversial just to be controversial. But if something you really believe in and you're standing behind 100%, that's what makes people respect you. They don't have to like you, but they will respect you. And the ones who love you will follow you to the death, and the ones who hate you will still talk about you. So we've got a win-win situation here. So we want to make sure that we're just like sharing anything about ourselves that may be kind of quirky or odd or stand apart. Those things that we tried to hide when we were in high school are the things we should like bring out now. So for example, last year I got to go to Comic-Con for the first time ever, and it was so much fun. And like I'm walking down the street at 6 a.m. through like a homeless shelter in downtown San Diego because there's just like homeless encampments everywhere. It's like 6 a.m. So I'm walking through all these like encampments wearing shiny tights and a cape. That was me. And I was just like, it's a little weird, but I'm kind of loving it, right? Because that's like my quirky thing. I love cosplay. It's a random thing that I love. I also love rock climbing, and I could talk about it all day long. And these are things that just make me special. And even if somebody could care less about cosplay or care less about rock climbing, it's memorable because it's not vanilla, right? It's not super polished. It's just unique.
And what's great is that it's who you are. which I absolutely love because you're bringing, once again, your authentic self. So I love the tips that you gave. And so on that note, how can our audience, and I say our because of the fact that some of your audience is going to be listening to, how can our audience follow you?
So I can be found on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel called The BU Crew. You can also type in thebucrew.com to find me on my website. So I drop a lot of tips on my YouTube channel about how to connect with other people, how to connect better with entrepreneurs, how to connect better, interestingly, how to connect better in person. So that's going to be a little different moving forward. Same strategies, just no touching. So that's going to be the best place to find me is thebucrew.com.
Nice. And then and all the tips and strategies that you left, we're definitely going to put them in the show notes. And then also the technology that you mentioned, I want to ensure that those are in the show notes as well, so that people can go back and look through them and find them. And I understand that you have something coming up pretty soon as far as a program that you're teaching.
Yes. So I do have a program coming up that is going to be all about how to create joint venture partnerships. And a joint venture partnership could be something like a launch, like a lot of you guys have seen that kind of like, 3-week launch style, but it can even be something like this. What Monica and I are doing right now is like a joint venture. We're doing something together. We're creating a show that didn't exist without the two of us in this conversation. So I'm creating I have a course coming out that's going to be all about how to do that, how to leverage your connections, how to make even more connections, and how to use your personality and your special you to increase your income and increase your impact in the world. So if you want to know more about that, you can come over to my site on thebucrew.com. Come over to my site and there will be something in the banner at the top to give you more information.
Sounds great. Thank you so much. It has been great having you here with me, Shereese. It's been simply a pleasure. And so for all of our audiences that are listening, as well as those that's going to catch up on the video, I definitely appreciate you following us, listening to us on the Decide to Move podcast. And if you want more details of all the information that Shereese had stated, feel free to go to www.decidetomovepodcast.com, and that'll take you where you can find any platform that you normally listen to your shows on a daily basis. Not only that, but you'll have lots of information about how you can find me and all the information that I provide as well. Thank you so much for joining us today. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you for listening to Decide to Move podcast with Monica M. Bijou. If you're ready to grow personally and professionally in order to take your destined position in the world, then schedule a free clarity call at bit.ly/call with Monica. That's bit.ly/call with Monica, or visit us at decidetomovepodcast.com for all links mentioned today and listen to previous episodes. Also, don't forget to subscribe and rate us on iTunes or your favorite listening platform.